I could stand here for hours looking out over the bush like this, and we get a long view of things, just scanning with binoculars and picking up trees that I know from other roads and little landmarks. Welcome to Djuma Game Reserve and welcome to Wild Earth Safari this afternoon. My name is Mark, with Becky on camera. Tara's in final control, and we're hoping to bring you a wonderful afternoon this afternoon. And we're on Zoe's Road, the junction with Rebecca's Road. And just looking out over, one thing I don't know if we can see it, but looking through a gap, if we take a straight line through that gap over there, there's a mast I can see a mast, and that's the mast at Buffelshoek Dam. I don't know if we'll be able to see that. Pardon?
Straight.
No, if we look at the horizon, that first big gap in the horizon, almost where that shade is. In fact, hello.
How are you?
Fine, and you? PC there? No, I'm just showing people, pointing out Buffelshoek Dam and Drakensberg and. Okay, bye. Ma. So, where are we looking now?
I'm looking at
That shadow.
tree sticks up.
I've lost it now. But it's in the shade, I think.
Oh, in the patch of shade.
There's a white pole sticking up out of the bush.
It's like finding a needle in a haystack.
Like finding a needle in a... yeah. Precisely. Okay, never mind. Anyways, that's looking out towards Buffelshoek Dam. The far ridge is looking at... well, it's actually Torchwood, but it's just the other side of Cheetah Cut Line. And you can see a couple of open patches of ground, which are those open patches on both Cheetah Cut Line and Drakensberg Drive. But now that we're getting into winter, it's quite amazing because although I can't see anything right now, often you can see things like rhino and elephant and buffalo, even giraffe, especially with the late afternoon sun behind us, looking east. And I'm hoping to maybe pick out a large mammal for you, but I'm not seeing anything at the moment. Anyways, let's go for a drive. We're going to see what we can find this afternoon. There's a bit of a steady wind blowing, and don't know what that'll do to game viewing, but we'll start. I believe the hyenas are at the den. Let's go and see them. I haven't been there in an afternoon for quite some time now, so I'd like to just pop in and see how the hyenas are faring, what they're up to. Before they move dens and we spend months trying to find them again. Back home I've got a deck that I sleep on, and sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, I won't even get out of bed. I just roll over with my binoculars and I can just stare. It's unbelievable. I can stare at the bush like that for hours. And eventually you see elephants moving, and you see giraffe, you see all sorts of things. patches of cloud in the sky, a little bit unusual for this time of the year. Either blue sky or it's grey. It's not common to have this kind of cloud on a wintry afternoon. Question from Massachusetts. Going Massachusetts. Look at these little ones. And one of the moms. Hello, children. Hello, babies. A very little one in the middle. The three bigger ones on the outside. I wonder what would happen if I had to get on my hands and knees and crawl towards them. I wonder if babysitter would get upset. Actually, babysitter might be one of the moms. Perhaps she will get upset. Perhaps the thought of the strongest jaws and those big teeth might make it a bad idea. Can't resist coming to investigate, can you? Even though you're very sleepy and you're sleepwalking and your eyes are half open. Hello, precious child. Elaine wanted to know about predators for elephant. Do elephant have any predators? Yes, in some places Elaine lion do hunt elephant, and young elephant, if they are left by the herd, can fall prey to hyena. Hello. Hello. Come here. Come to the door. Come this side. Yeah. Take the camera off and hold it down the side of the Land Rover, about head height with the cub, and make slow movements, cause then, and then it might even come up to the camera and sniff the lens. It wants to. Okay. Hope you're not going to get seasick in the next 2 minutes. Just getting the camera out. Doesn't want to play. But some francolins have just been frightened behind us, and this adult is actually starting to take note. She's lifted her head. She's curious as to what might be coming this way, because there is these francolins behind us making a noise. It attracted her attention. The youngsters have woken up now also. I wonder what she's going to do. She's going to hide away. Wonder what's wandering around. Somewhere behind us. Yeah, Francolins. Lost for words there. Francolins are complaining as though there's a predator that chased them. The only thing I could think of is maybe there's another one of the hyenas coming back to the den, or moving about in the grasses somewhere behind us. But they're still complaining, that francolin. I'm wondering, let's maybe just investigate. Not much I can do. There's nowhere I can go. Maybe I can get around this termite mound. There's a bit of a drainage line here. A number of very big termite mounds. One thing I can do is go to the top of this termite mound and peer over the back of it. I'm just going to sneak a peek. Can't see anything, and the Franklins, of course, have stopped. Could have been any number of small predators. I was hoping maybe it was a big predator. That's why you got to follow me with the camera, so that you can capture my demise. See if we can get back around this side of the termite now. Yes, I'm back online. I've plugged myself in. What age did the hyenas start hunting? Hello, John. Good question, John. I'd say maybe from about a year onwards they maybe accompany the adults when they're hunting. I don't know as far as what age they actually engage in hunting themselves. Probably only from about 18 months to 2 years. Not sure, to be honest. I wonder where all the adults are. And there were a lot of tracks heading... Where did we see all the tracks this morning? Heading west. Wetella Access Road in Gallagher, I think. Well, it is mid-afternoon, so I'm not expecting very much activity out of these children because, well, nap time. I think it's better to get here maybe later afternoon when they start waking up and getting a little bit boisterous. 1, 2, 3, and yet another youngster. 5 youngsters, 4 one size and 1 small one. And I'm wondering how many mothers. We know that Floppy Ear's got some youngsters, and we know that one other female that doesn't have any particular ear markings, we've seen her suckling. I'm guessing it could be even 3 mothers in this den, which is somewhat unusual. This new generation, growing up at the same time as Karula's 2 youngsters, they're going to have many encounters with each other as they grow up. Thinking these larger cubs must be about 4 months old by now. 4 or 5 months. Very small ones, probably only about 3. Yes. That's a very good question, Sarah in New York. Hi there. Is it better to keep quiet when walking in the bush or better to make a noise? And there it depends on what your purpose is. If I'm walking in the bush and it's thick bush and I have a feeling there's going to be a predator there, like if I'm walking on lion tracks or leopard tracks, or much like now when I was walking in the bush because I'd heard some francolins shouting because they got disturbed by a predator. When I'm imagining it, there's a very good likelihood of there being any one of a number of predators there. Could have been lion, could have been... I make sure that my footfalls are quite heavy and loud. And under those circumstances, I would make a little bit of noise. I don't want to be creeping up on a cat. I have crept up on cats in the past and they don't like it. And I found the best thing to do is at least let them know that you're coming. So that they wake up and they sit up and they growl at you or they do something to let you know where they are so that you don't walk into them and you don't incur their wrath. You see, cats are subtle. They expect that you can see their early warning signs, which are the swishing tail and the flat ears and the frown. But 99% of the time you don't see that. And you don't see that first warning. So by the time you know there's a cat there, if you're being too quiet, it's when they're giving their second or third warning. And by then, well, it's adrenaline pumpingly crazy because they'll be rushing at you, flying on top of the grasses, spitting fire and fury. And those can be testy moments. So sometimes I've noticed if you make a little bit of a noise, the cats look up and look at you and either run away or at least give some indication where they are. And the idea is not to chase them. The idea is not to get too close to them, that they're going to want to try and defend themselves. The idea is to merely establish where they are. So when a cat sits up in the grasses and looks at you, hopefully that's the closest you want to get to the cat, and you can then back off. And they're intelligent enough, most of the time, they're intelligent enough to see you backing off. So quite a lot of the time, walking through the bush, it's imperative that you're not very, very quiet. Also, like buffalo, you don't want to creep up on buffalo. Elephant are going to hear you whether you're quiet or not. And sometimes it's important to be as quiet as you can with elephant. But just the fact that we wear shoes makes a noise. And that's a noise that you cannot hide as a human being. Every animal knows the sound of the footsteps of everything else, including us humans. I can sleep at home. Even when I'm sleeping on the deck, I can hear when there's hyena walking under the deck or whether it's lion walking under the deck. As subtle as that sound is, just by the way, the pace of I can hear an elephant 50 yards away, as quiet as they are. Just those very, very gentle foot shuffles, and the flap of the ears against the shoulders. So everything, when they're sleeping, especially like this, when they're sleeping, they learn by watching the adults, they learn the sounds of other creatures. I'll show you. I'll just put my foot on the ground. Okay, well, the wind's blowing. Well, that's okay. Bad example. They're cubs. They're youngsters. They haven't learned yet. I could do flick flicks here and they won't even be looking at me. Hello. Yes, it's me. Hello. And cub was saying I couldn't care less. Very well. So much for that. If it was lion, it would be a different matter. As soon as my foot touched the ground, they'd be up in a flash. But these little ones are just a bit sleepy. But there are times when I want to be very quiet in the bush, and that's when I walk with barefoot, and that's when I'm just trying to be a voyeur. I don't want anything to know that I'm there, and I can maybe take an hour to cover 50 to 100 yards, just walking very, very slowly, very quietly, getting really close to things like giraffe and impala, and zebra, an elephant. Just a big bundle of fluff and spots there. It would be love to just go and curl up amongst them. Hello everyone in New Jersey. Is it true that hyenas can change their sex at will? No, Yvonne. No, none of the mammals can change sex. It's a phenomenon that can happen. Fish, it is known to happen in fish. It is known to happen in some insects, I think. But it cannot happen with mammals, higher animals. There's a lot of confusion because hyenas are really an impossible animal to study, because the female genitals look very similar to those of a male's genitals. So much so that even scientists studying them, darting them, and being about as close to the genitals as anybody really wants to get, find it difficult to tell the difference. And I think that is why there's been this misconception misconception, you know what I mean, this misinformation, this problem with the sexing of hyenas, because there have been scientists who have been convinced that a particular individual is a male, an individual that they've darted time and time again, only to find that it has cubs, thinking that it was a male. And it's those kind of incidents that can confuse people and think that they can change sex. They don't change sex. I don't believe that's possible. But what it is just very, very high levels of testosterone in the females, because it's a matriarchal society. It is hierarchical. There's a very strict hierarchy, when males are perhaps the lowest in the hierarchy. And they're very subtle signs. Obviously, a hyena that's had cubs is going to be lactating, and that's one way of telling that she's a female for sure. But from what I read from a report from scientists who do a hyena study, and this is up in the Serengeti, scarring after childbirth, after giving birth, is one sure way of differentiating, between males and females, because the pseudo penis of the female, what is actually her clitoris, is very long. It is penile looking, or it is phallic in appearance. There was a theory that if it had a pointed tip or a rounded tip, then there was a theory there that one was male, one was female, but even that tended to confuse scientists at times. But that is the birth canal as well, and because cubs are born through that, it stretches and it causes tears, in fact, and so they're healing scars. Okay, we're gonna move on. There's another vehicle here. We're gonna move on because these children are sleeping, and it looks like there's some children coming to view them. So we will move on. Our 6 Hyena from this morning are still pretty much Nyala Road South and Nyala Road North. Bye bye, Hyena. See you later. Okay, that's fine. Just wait until. Hello everybody. And Mbula was found up at Cheetah Plains. Nice to know he's up there. Well, I suppose not really nice to know that he's up there, because that means that he's not our side. Ephraim, where are you checking? Ephraim again? Okay, copy. The elephant have been doing a lot of digging here. I think this was like a truffle or something. This is what the elephant would have been digging for over here. It's like not a fungus. Look, I found a crustacean. Believe it or not, we get crustaceans here. This, although we're far from the sea or water. There's a little crustacean. A woodlouse. There was some animated movie. Was it Bug's Life with the 2 woodlice, and the one had a unibrow? I love that. Special little thing. Going back onto this because it's obviously feeding and having fun. I don't know what this is. It could be a big tube root type of thing. At first I thought it was a foot. And then the big callus. No, but it's plant matter. Interesting. Don't know what it is. Oops. Try and put it back the way it was. Okay, we still have a few hyena questions that we want to get through. That came while we were there. And we're going to go to Impala Plains. Kathy wants to know how many cubs a hyena can have at one time. I think up to 4, Kathy. 2, I suppose, is the average. Jody in Sydney, Australia. Hello, Jody. If 2 female cubs are born, is it true that one kills the other? It depends, yes and no. I think it has been recorded in some places. You know, a lot of information that we have had up till now has been through the observations of scientists doing PhD work in specific areas. And what a hyena clan is likely to do in places like the Serengeti, where there is a high population of them and there's a lot of pressure, is different to what would happen with a clan of hyenas in, let's say, here in Kruger, or perhaps in a much drier region like the Kalahari. Now, here we've got an example of something that I don't think has been recorded in terms of 2, if not 3 different females giving birth to cubs in the same clan. Not only the alpha female, because I think there's some books that will tell you that it's only the alpha female that gives birth and other cubs will be killed. So it's very difficult to answer with conviction a question like that, because while yes, perhaps it has been studied and noted and recorded in clans elsewhere, and even likely could have even happened here in the Sabi Sand, that hyena cubs have killed each other after birth because of the competition and the testosterone levels and things like that are the factors that are involved. But I have to assume that there are at least 2 females. Out of those 5 cubs, there have to be at least 2 females. Whether especially the very little one, who knows? Maybe the very little one, there was another cub born with it and it was female and it was killed. That we will never know. We would need a camera inside the den and we would need to be able to watch the birth. That would be very interesting, kind of like Lily the bear cam, Hyena the den cam. Hyena den cam. Watching a live birth and being able to see how many babies come out and then being able to see what happens. But what we would observe out of one birthing, out of one incident, we could not take for granted that that is what happens in hyena society everywhere, because it is just that one moment. In fact, within even the same clan, there will be different times when maybe it will happen and maybe it won't, if you know what I mean. Hello, Stacy in Melbourne. Here's a group of zebra right on the edge of Impala Plains. I'm sure they go out onto the open area at night. Excuse me, bit of dust in my nose. Hello, Stacy. How fast can a hyena run? Ooh, I don't know, 50 kilometers an hour. See, hyena don't really have to have the speed. Hyena are very, very efficient predators, but not because they have speed like a cheetah, but because they have stamina like a wild dog, and they have a very economical gait. They have the way they run with a relatively stiff-legged trot. Energy-wise, is very economical. And they can run for longer than most of the prey animals that they would be chasing. So they often tire something out before they bring it down. Or they just overwhelm it with numbers and surround it. But I'm sure short bursts of speed of 55, maybe even faster, kilometers an hour. I would say though that their sustained speed is probably only about 35, 40 kilometers an hour. I wonder why there's oxpeckers on the left of us, zebras to the right, and here I am stuck in the middle with you. And you can say jokers to the left of me.
And it's strangers, isn't it? Strangers to the left?
Jokers to the left of me. Is it strangers to the right? Here I am, stuck in the middle. Excuse me, turn the sound down, I'm going to blow my nose. It feels blocked, but I don't think it is. Not the greatest view of zebra because they're behind bushes and things. So I wonder why there would be an oxpecker on the other side of the road. And the zebra are all there. Hello, Cara. Kara is Cara. Cara as in Tara, or spelt like Sarah, which is Sarah. So could it be Kara? Yes, Cara as in Tara. Okay, with never mind. Hello, Cara in Wyoming. There are places here where people camp, and are there safety measures when people camp? Not here in the Sabi Sand, Kara. Cara. Honey, it's also a yes and no thing. Depends on whether it's the public camping or whether it's guides camping with guests. Because you see, I've done a lot of, can't call it, well, I suppose camping is kind of describes it. We would call it fly camping or trails camping. Doing overnight walking safaris and then just sleeping out wherever we stopped for the night. Well, no, they're actually luxury overnight walking safaris, so I actually would have staff setting up camp at a pre-arranged spot, but to the people walking it would seem like it's a random place. But under those circumstances, no safety measures or nothing surrounding the camp. The thing is that in a lot of the wilderness places where I've slept out overnight, animals are so unaccustomed to people there that they wouldn't associate people with food as they would at campsites as you might have in Wyoming. And so the other part of your answer is yes, in some places in South Africa they do. In Kruger National Park there are campsites where people can camp. Let's move along. And in those places they have electrified fences around the campsites because they're permanent campsites. So I think that would probably be the best way to answer it. In places where there are permanent campsites, yes, there are measures that are taken to prevent animals in some places, not all places. I don't want to give you the wrong impression, because if you go to a place like Botswana and you camp at, say, Third Bridge, it's just there's nothing around that camp, or you camp near Kaib, or any of the campsites, the official campsites in places like Botswana, or even some places in Tanzania, in Tarangire, and where you are able to set up camp. It would be like this, just a little patch of open ground, and you set up camp and there's nothing around you. And they would be permanent campsites, and they would have animals that are likely to be accustomed to people being there. So yes, there you would have to take care of your food stuff and things, and not have food in the tents. You'd have to do similar things to what you do with bears. But I just want to see if we can get this lilac-breasted roller with the impala in the background. I'm trying to answer this question because it's a yes and no. It depends the type of answer. Because here in the Sabi Sand there are no campsites, so nobody's going to be camping. Well, having said that, I've camped in the Sabi Sand when I was training guides, and we didn't have much around our camp. It can be very dangerous in some of the permanent campsites in some of the game reserves where people have camped for decades and left food. People get a kick out of leaving food for the genet or the civet or the hyena. You know, those lamb chops, the bone, or the rind from a big T-bone steak or something. And it's under those circumstances that animals get used to people being there, and those are the times that it becomes dangerous. Humans don't realize that when you when let's not use the word interfere. Humans don't realize that when you leave food out for wild animals, you are, depending on what animal it is, you're potentially looking for trouble. Did you tighten on that lilac-breasted roller?
No.
Because I wasn't watching my monitor. Beautiful bird. Just recently we had an incident in the Umfolozi Game Reserve with a bunch of school kids They were told, don't keep any food in your tent. But even then, that's it. Didn't even have anything to do with the food in the tent. But a kid was bitten in the face by a hyena. Most of the camping accidents, and when I say that, it's not like there are hundreds of them, but occasionally there's an accident, and you find if hyena are involved, it's normally they're biting the face. And that is because people cook on an open fire, they eat their food from an open fire, and it doesn't matter how much you wash your hands. You can actually see the zebra through the back there now. They're getting closer to the open area. The impala have stretched out where some of them are where the zebra are. Going to bed with the smell of meat on your hands and your face. If a hyena is sniffing around, it'll hone straight into that smell. And elephants get used to people camping to the point where elephants know that the cooler boxes keep the food, and they know how to open them. They know how to just turn them on their side and stand on them with a foot, or just put pressure on with a foot, and the cooler box pops open. I've seen elephants taking peanut butter bottles, plastic peanut butter bottles, and chewing them until they get all the peanut butter out of them, and then spitting the bottle out. And that can only come from an elephant that's done that before, and that is because people are careless. And you see, what happens is, eventually the elephant, or the monkey, or the hyena, or whatever it is, the honey badger, or the civet even, it comes around, and you have people who are very innocent, they're very conscientious, they don't want to leave any food lying around, and because they don't, the animal starts getting a little bit irritable with them because it wants to find some food. And then those are the people that are likely to have an accident, because they're not leaving food because all their predecessors have. So in some places, measures should be implemented, things should be put in place to stop people and animals coming together. And in some places, it's actually nice to just go camping and know that the animals might come sniff around, but they're not likely to do anything because they're not accustomed to it. Danielle, that was a lilac-breasted roller. One of our prettiest birds. Ed Daves, what about Ed Daves? Thanks, Ed. Yes, I actually saw the headline, and then, well, computer locked up, so I couldn't, and then I forgot about it. But there was a headline yesterday, in fact, I think it was, or the day before. Thanks for that, Ed. A grizzly in Yellowstone killed a hiker. Was it Yellowstone or Yosemite? Yellowstone. Yeah, I don't know if they're grizzlies in Yosemite. And thanks to Kenny, the kid has actually been discharged from hospital in Richards Bay in Natal after the hyena incident. But I didn't know about the incident in Mana Pools. Thanks, Penny. Evidently a guy had recently killed a lion up in Mana. Oh, no, wait. I remember the guy taken out, and maybe it's the same incident, Penny. You can tell me. There was a guy showering up at Mana Pools. He was taken by a lion. And this is a new incident. I've been camping up in Mana Pools. I love Mana Pools up in Zimbabwe, northern Zimbabwe, on the Zambezi River, one of the most beautiful parts of the lower Zambezi. I also lived on the other side of the river, on the Zambian side, but I have to be honest, It was a dust bowl compared to the Monopool side of the river. Hopefully signal's okay now. We've always had a bit of a problem on the Impala Road. I'll hold off on that question for a little bit. Becky in Wisconsin. Becky, hello, in Wisconsin. Becky seems there are a lot of baby animals. Look at this colony here. There's a special time of the year that dwarf mongoose colony, they're not letting us get closer. You know, we can maybe get a glimpse from here. Is that an open gap? Well, it depends what animals, Becky, but no, they're not that, well, the cubs, the hyena cubs, yes. I mean, a lot of the animals, see, once again, it's a very broad question, or rather a very broad answer to a very straightforward question, because it depends on what animals they're talking about. Yes, there is a special time of the year for some animals, and no, it doesn't matter for other animals. A lot of the herbivores, a number of the herbivores tend to give birth in the early summer when there's good grazing and there's rains and there's good chance of, well, there's a greater abundance of food that assists with the survival of the survival rate. Mothers are healthier, they can look after their young ones better, the bush is thicker. So for some herbivores, early summer, November, December. For some of the predators, not really, and yes, for some of the other predators. It really depends on what animals, whether they have a special time of the year or not. But there aren't really any animals that are young that have been born now in the dead of winter. Everything's a few months old by now, all the youngsters that we see. Dwarf mongoose might have babies now. They're quite prolific breeders. Rodents might have babies now. Huh? More? That's this cloud that's playing havoc with the iris. 1 minute it's bright sunshine and then a cloud comes over and it gets a bit dark. But they've finished kind of early for the day, sunning themselves before they all go into the termite mound. Grooming, sunning. Okay, shall we move on? Numbers again. I really got to look at my book. Hello, Kathy. How long do zebras live in the wild? I can't remember. I'll have to look it up. I have a mental block when it comes to numbers. I've just been writing fact sheets. One would think that these things would stay in my head. I've just been writing fact sheets for all these animals. And I've lectured, I've taught guides on all these numbers. You would think that some of these numbers would stay in my head. Zebra in the wild, longevity, can't even remember that. Whether it's 20 years or it's a squirrel on top of that termite mound. I was thinking maybe it was a reptile, but obviously I need new glasses too. Not only do I need a new memory, I need about another 150 gigs in my head. Actually, since it's only information, I probably only need a few kilobytes. So imagine if we could just transplant a few more kilobytes into the head. Hello, squirrel. If we could just open up and put in a little microchip. 100 kilobytes. That should do it for the ages of all the animals. Okay, let's go and find something. See if we can find a reptile for Marissa in Arizona. Yes, zebra up to about 40 years, I think they're known to live for. Horses too, I think. Aren't horses also about the same? Marissa, Arizona. What reptiles do we get here in the reserves? Look, there's wild cotton, he says, digressing. Let's see, we have one species of crocodile, the Nile crocodile. We have one species of chameleon, the flap-necked chameleon, terrapin. We have numerous species. Oh, wait. While I can still count. 2 species of monitor lizards. The Nile monitor, Varanus niloticus, and the white-throated monitor, Varanus albigularis, also known as a rock monitor or tree monitor, which is actually the white-throated monitor. Those are the 2 monitor lizards. I think we've only got one agama. I don't know if we have the rock agama here because we don't really have any rocks. But we do have the blue-headed tree agama. And that does it for those kind of unusual reptiles. Then we have numerous species of skinks, numerous species of large geckos. We have the Biberon's thick-toed gecko. We have the common or tropical house gecko. We possibly have tree geckos. Difficult to distinguish them from the tropical house geckos, and I'm not sure whether they occur this far south. We have tire tracks going off the roof. The Wahlberg's velvety gecko, stunning gecko. But the biggest, of course, is the big Biberon's thick-toed gecko. Can't think of other of the larger geckos. Lizards, skinks, numerous snake species. Probably close to 50 odd, no, maybe 40, 50 odd snake species. Joey and Sarah saying 30 something. Zebra. Average about 22 years, evidently in the wild up to 12 years. My book says up to 40 years. Let's say zebra can live for between 12 and 40 years. The thing is, depends on whether they're predators or not. Well, that was Impala Road. Let's maybe take Nyala. No, so we'll get breakup if we go up towards Sydney's Dam. And we're just going to change the camera battery quickly. Bo Derek. Elaine Bo Derek. Okay. Hello, Elaine. Just I hope that kind of covers the reptiles pretty much. Elaine wants to know, since the lion prey on everything else, who preys on the lion? And the answer is lion. But lion cubs are susceptible to predation too by other predators like jackal or hyena. Leopard might even take out lion cubs if they found it. Elephant might kill a lion cub. Buffalo are known to kill lion cubs if they find them, kind of preempting their own or preventing their own demise later on in life. So lion essentially are their own worst enemies because of just the way lion society works. They become their own population control measures. And then we had a question about the injured hippo. Is it what's happened to the injured? Have no idea, I'm afraid. Was that the one in that little pan below Twin Dams, Tara? Well, it wasn't so little, like it was a baby. Well, it's a young bull that's been reprimanded by another big bull that's come into town and he's being pushed out. I don't think there's anything has happened to him. We would have seen vultures would attract lion probably if he died. But it's funny, he was there the one day when Tara was on drive, and then the next day I was there. Ooh, we couldn't see it. And then yesterday Tara was there and he was there again. You got to remember that hippos sleep in the water all day, and from us being in final control yesterday, the hippo was just sleeping in that water. He was a little injured, but hippo can live with their injuries. Part of hippo life being injured in fights. Just a bad signal area because where we are, it'll be over soon. I'll try and make it as painless as possible. Big giraffe was here. Crunch. Sorry, dove. Myra. Is it M-Y-R-A? My grandmother's name was Myra. That's why I asked. That's pretty. Myra in Tennessee. Hello, Myra. I haven't ever met another Myra. Tennessee. Where could I recommend if you're going on one safari in your lifetime, concentrating on photography? Where should you go? Gosh, that's not half putting me on the spot. I wouldn't want to say something and then you go there and say, "Oh, this was terrible. Mark told us to go there." Kenya. Not really my favorite of safari destination places. But for wildlife photography, perhaps there are places in Kenya like the Masai Mara, or Lewa Downs, or Tanzania's probably got better places. Serengeti, Tarangire, in the Selous. You can't beat the Selous Game Reserve. But if you didn't do one, you see, it's difficult. Gosh, I would even say maybe even Botswana, Okavango Delta for that one-off. But then even here in the Sabi Sand, if you want to have one safari and you're going to be taking photographs and you're talking about the opportunity to get really close and personal with things like leopard, here in the Sabi Sand, there are very few places that are as good as this. Maybe some places in Serengeti, but for the kind of opportunities you could have here, you know, Sabi Sand for a photographic safari. But it is quite commercial and it there are a lot of people, and it's the thing is you're guaranteed to see a lot of animals here in a relatively short space of time, in a relatively all relatively close to each other. This is still a very big, I remember, this is still a very, very big game reserve. It's not that it's because it's a small game reserve, it's an exceptionally large wildlife area. But here in the Sabi Sand, animals are so accustomed to people and vehicles that they pretty much carry on doing their own thing. So you get to see and photograph animals doing what they naturally do. I'm trying to decide where to go. I go to Aubrey's Road. Anne in Indiana saying that she's been to many of the places that I mentioned, but Masai Mara is still her favorite. You'll find a lot of people will say Masai Mara is their favorite. It is pretty amazing, but I don't think I'm the right person to ask that kind of question, because I'm biased, and I will always start my sentence with "it depends." Depends. Yeah, don't know what to say. I do want to put on some warmer items though. Getting rather chilly. I'm just going to stop here. I want to put on a jacket and a cold that and that. I spent time in the Masai Mara. I was in the Mara Triangle. I was very far from the Mara River. No, actually, there was another time that I was in the Mara. I forgot about that. It was just for a very short visit once. I had a girlfriend who worked for a company that owned lodges everywhere, and we flew into the Masai because she had some work to do at the lodge. And it was a lot different to the place that I had stayed. So in terms of the Masai Mara, it depends on where you stay, and I don't know it that well to be able to recommend anywhere in particular that is better than anywhere else. Because invariably there is. I mean, here I am talking about these things, and I should be saying, for a once-in-a-lifetime photographic opportunity safari, come to Djuma Game Reserve. It also then comes down to, it depends on what time of the year it is, because that makes a difference too. Hello everybody in New Zealand. Shanae and Mum and Craig. No, I suppose they should be sticking up.
Put them in your mouth like walrus teeth.
I like that.
Yeah.
Ouch! It was a bit sharp on the gum. I like that. Oh, then I can talk elephant. My tusks.
Just need to grow your nose.
Pardon?
Just need to grow your nose.
Just grow my nose. I thought she said put them in my nose. Beautiful acacia thorns. I'll put them as a hood ornament. A dash ornament. Shanae and Craig and La Diane. When do geckos make the most noise? It depends on whether they It depends on whether they're noisy geckos or not. I've got geckos making a noise in my room at the moment. Noise is territorial or mating. I have, excuse me, I used to have a lot of tropical house geckos at home in the Timbavati, and they make a very, very light, soft noise. It goes like this. It's like they're constantly disagreeing with each other. But that's actually one of their mating noises. So just remember, when you do that next time to your spouse, just be careful, there might be geckos in the room. There are big Bibrons thick-toed geckos in my house now that have somewhat displaced all the smaller tropical house geckos. They make a slightly larger noise. And often, I mean, in summer, yes, they say they make a lot more noise, but even nowadays, in the winter months, they make a little bit of noise. But nothing compared to the geckos of places like the Kalahari, or the Namibia. The Namibian desert has the barking gecko. And I've never been there. Well, I've been there, but I've never heard them. So I don't know how loud they are, but they evidently make quite a noise. And since I don't know them, I don't know what time of the year they make their noise. Oh yeah, speaking about reptiles, I was going through all the different reptiles, and I think part of the question was, when are they active, or are they active now? And the answer is yes, some of them are. Tortoises not, terrapins yes. We might see some Nile monitors sunning themselves occasionally nowadays. And there have been snake tracks every now and again on a really warm day in the winter. There are snake tracks on the ground. The geckos are always active. Somehow they can deal with the cold, even though they don't have proper scales and they look like their skin is thinner than rice paper. There's a crumbic making a noise here. Yeah, little bird without a tail, with a slightly russet underbelly. I can't see it. Oh, there it is, at the back of that knobsaw. I wonder why. looking towards us. So this might be a snake in the grass or something. This is a distinctive alarm call that is designed to bring in all sorts of other birds to come and help this little bird called a long-billed crombeck. And unfortunately it's the back of all of this vegetation, but it's distressed. And move just an inch, bird. No, that's a few inches. I suppose I could just go and take a look. It must have been a snake. And now it's actually, there's a very interesting bird in that little knobthorn at the back. There's a black flycatcher. It's not a fork-tailed drongo, but I don't know if we're going to get it because he's come along to have a look. Now, even though I was crunching on leaves and walking through the grasses there, that little crombeck was getting more and more insistent on me finding what it was trying to show me. But unfortunately, I can't see what the bird was seeing. And I'm convinced it's a snake. There's a termite mound in there. It's quite likely there's a hole in the termite mound that a snake has gone into, or even a hole in this dead tree. But that's very typical of the alarm call that a bird makes when it wants you to come and investigate and chase a snake away. And once I showed some real interest, I mean, at one point that crombeck was very close to my head. It was getting closer to me, and the more I was saying I can't see it, the more incessant it was getting, or insistent rather. Let's go a little bit forward so you can see this black flycatcher, because this will be one for the list that we don't have. There it is. Oh, don't go, don't go. It's not, it's a southern black tit. I saw it from underneath, I only saw black, but I'm seeing now it's got white on the wing. So it's actually a southern black tit. And another reason why I thought it was a flycatcher was because it was quiet. A southern black tit would normally be making a lot of noise under the circumstances. I can hear another southern black tit in a tree further away making the noise. I just thought it was quite appropriate that we're talking about snakes and reptiles, and there's definitely been something in that bush reptile-like. That was an alarm call. So now I remember the question, can't remember who it was, but do we have spotters to find animals for us? The answer is no, not really. Kathy, that's right, Kathy, that came to me. Suddenly came to me through my earpiece from Tara. Kathy was asking, not really, what it is that there are enough game drive vehicles out. Well, there are a few game drive vehicles out. The game drive vehicles have spotters, trackers actually. Guys who sit on the seat in the front of the vehicle and they look for tracks and they follow tracks and they help to find animals while the guides are talking to guests and concentrating on where they're driving. You see, I have to multitask. I don't have someone sitting on, excuse me doves, someone sitting on front. I'm doing everything at once by myself. Excuse me doves. Following, looking for tracks, following tracks, looking for animals, talking to you, talking on the radio, changing gear, holding the spotlight, picking thorns, answering questions, working 3 pedals at once, working 15 gears, looking in books and playing with binoculars and camera and radio. See, I can multitask. Multiple. But that's to answer the question and stop babbling. The game drive vehicles, essentially because we're all driving around, we each help each other find animals. There isn't anyone whose just sole function it is to go out and find animals. There are, however, game lodges that do that to ensure that their guests have a big hive safari. You can debate the merits of both, but to some degree it is more fun finding animals ourselves rather than just hearing about animals on the radio and going straight there. And that's what we're doing. We are hoping to find some animals. Wow. Let's go back to Sandy Patch. Karula is around here somewhere. A nice sunset. Beautiful color. Yeah. Hello Lee in Colorado. Following on from the lion question earlier, and since they are their own worst enemies, what percentage of them get to die of old age? It's a good question. I couldn't give you an accurate figure, but I would say a fairly high percentage of them. I see the vehicle out here. Karula might even be here. I was trying to get radio signal. I'm not. There's got to be a Karula there. Station's near Sandy Patch. I'll mark here Voyatella access. Have we got something there? This is impossible. There's another vehicle here now. Let me just talk to Ryan. Hello. Good, and you? What's up here? Karula? Only Mampimpan? Okay, because I've been in this area now, but I don't get radio signal here because, well, we're waiting for things to happen here at the lodge with the repeater. But I'm dead in the water as far as radio, so I nearly bumped into the sighting. Are you on standby or are you going in? Okay, I'll go for a ride and come back. Yeah, no, I can copy you. It'll work this side of Aubrey's Road. Anything that side, don't get radio signal. Okay. Okay, just as well. Ryan was there, otherwise I might have just stumbled in there and upset a few people. Karula's cubs are there. That's why I've been wandering around here because I've had this feeling that something was going to happen in this part of the world, and that's why we ended up here at this time of the day. I'm hoping we're going to get there because she's not with the cubs, and that means at sunset, well, shortly after sunset, we're going to have to leave them. Let's go down towards, we'll do a loop around again. Come up the power line back onto Sandy Patch. And I'll talk to you in the meantime. Sarah was saying, no, so I was trying to concentrate and couldn't hear two radios at once at that moment. Hello, Robin. Beautiful sky. Look at this cloud color. We need to get to somewhere where we're going to see the sunset. Ryan, just to let you know, I'm copying this channel now. Okay, copy. I'm hoping we'll be able to get there. Because with Karula not there, we can't be with them at night. And evidently there are hyena in the area. Perhaps. We're not going to take the power line because we'll then end up at a place like Impala Road where we don't have signal. We won't know whether we can go and see these cats or not. This is a really beautiful sky tonight. There's more of colour here in looking east than there will be in the west. Hello. Where was I born? Where did I grow up? I learn things. I was born in a Catholic nunnery hospital, Catholic hospital with nuns, called Marymount. I'm not Catholic, by the way. But I was born in, and that was in Johannesburg. At about the age of 2, my parents moved to a small town east of Johannesburg, a little town called Benoni. One of the only towns in the country that is named after someone in the Bible. Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. And went to school in Benoni, but always came to Kruger, and we had as a kid a holiday home in the Timbavati, which was second home. Well, we've lost a lot of this cloud colour. We're going to have a look. Just beautiful. Magpie shrikes. And I think that's where my knowledge started. I knew that nature was the only thing that interested me since before I could walk, and been passionate about animals and nature and growing things and plants and anything that moves since a very, very small kid. So that drove me to only really read books about animals, and just do everything in my life was just always about animals. And having access to areas of bushveld where I could roam pretty much freely was my greatest that's where my greatest schooling came from. And that brought me to live and work in the bush, starting off here in my first job in the bush, even after I'd been taking international guests to my place in the Timbavati, that people I'd met from the city. I guess that led me to the lodge industry, where I started working here in the Sabi Sand many years ago, and then progressed from here to places like Botswana, the Okavango Delta, and from there to Tanzania and Kenya and Zambia, and wildlife areas in all those places, and managing game reserves. And just my passion, just wanting to know all about it, and spending more time in it than in books, perhaps. I never took the academic route. This has been my university, this very classroom that you see in front of you. And there isn't a set curriculum. There isn't a finite number of, or a finite amount of information, or a finite concept of knowledge. It's infinite. Just this little bowl of bush we have in front of us. It's too much to learn in a lifetime, let alone other worlds and other habitats and other countries and other wildlife. Hi, Laurie. In California, finding it quite amazing that we have sunset. And let's see, probably what, 8 o'clock in the morning in California, maybe, Laurie? Sun's just come up there, well not just, but early morning California, afternoon here in South Africa, evening. And yes, it does. I think every now and then I comment on it too. Every now and then it takes someone like Laurie in California just reminding me how fantastic this is, that I can be with you no matter where you are in the world, and that, well, we might not be seeing much today, but there's always tomorrow. If we rush around and show you all the animals that there are to see, if we could do that, not that we can, what's going to stop you from not even bothering to come back tomorrow? It's the promise of what is around the next corner. What is tomorrow going to bring? What tracks are we going to find? We're in a vast wildlife area. Animals have freedom of movement. Can't for 1 minute even expect to see an animal, let alone, well, it's the expectation, you see. Just because we're in a wildlife area doesn't mean I think they're calling me. Go ahead. But yes, Laurie just saying how wonderful it is to be able to be in this, be able to communicate like this, be on opposite sides of the planet, different time zones, and the fact that it brings it home, how different it is on the other side of the world. But we're on the other side of the world in two ways. We're on the other side of the world in terms of time, but we're also on the opposite side of the world in terms of season. Now, it's not that the whole of Africa has winter now, because North Africa, just like North America, is in summer. And South Africa, just like South America, is in summer. I mean winter. Oops. Hello, Alexi. In a small way, he does, Alexi, in terms of maybe staying behind to look after the cubs when the rest of the clan have gone out hunting or searching for food. A babysitter. He's good for being a babysitter and for letting the youngsters chew on his ears, and for yes, babysitter. Losing light. Ryan, come in. What's the status there? No, I'm not getting that at all. Yeah, I'll go again. I sort of got that thing. Thanks. Got a little bit of that. Part of the reason for this not working too well at the moment is that storm took out the antenna at the lodge, but I can't imagine why that would influence our radio reception, because never mind, I'm thinking aloud. The repeaters at the thinking we might. Oops, wrong channel. Try again. I don't even know where they are now. It's getting dark, and I'm reluctant to go into these cubs. Is it? Not there, no. Marsha wants to know if Karula or the cubs have a radio collar on. No, not at all, Marsha. That's why we head out every day going looking for them, trying to find their tracks first to see. Once we find their tracks, we get an idea of more or less the area they've been in and the direction that they were moving in, to be able to maybe look a little bit harder. But no young animal will ever be collared. It cannot be done. So only adults are collared, but Karula isn't. None of the leopards up in this part of the world are collared, in fact. But the reason why you don't collar a young animal is because it's still growing, and it would be too stressful to continually dart it every month or so to loosen the collar. And very stressful for these animals when they get darted. So it's only really limited studies that are done on some animals where animals are collared. Decisions. We're gonna go on and carry on with our night drive. It's gonna get too dark for the camera. Sorry about that. Tomorrow's another day. Tara has more luck with them than me. Yesterday, you had them yesterday. None of them were found today except for the two now. So I would really rather not even be here going into darkness. Hyenas could just come sneaking along, and I wouldn't want to be the reason why hyenas were attracted to an area where the cubs are without Karula. Ryan, come in. Copying you now. It's getting too dark. Rather, I'm going to leave it. Probably should close that lock soon if Karula's not there. No, I'm really not copying it. Hang on, let me try my other radio. Say that again. Yeah, I'm just thinking about camera. Not really that much light for it, and it is going to get dark soon. But maybe we'll be lucky tomorrow. Thanks. I mean, the one youngster is sitting up on a termite mound, but other vehicles stand by. We will go and find their father. That's what we will do. start again. I was on the other channel. Sorry. Sarah was in Okavango. Hello, Sarah. Similar incident to what we had now with that crombec making a noise. There was a bird making a noise, dive bombing a black mamba in a tree. So, Sarah, you know what I was... Yes, we experienced that. That's a very distinct, very fast alarm call that is almost guaranteed to mean snake, because of the way it brings in other birds and attracts attention of things. There's a different call when it's a slender mongoose potentially raiding a nest or something. So, time to pull out an illuminating device. Ah! See, that's what you get for just putting acacia thorns just in random places where they get hidden and stab you. Where can I put it that it's gonna... See, I've got a carved elephant, and these would make nice tusks for a carved elephant. Untangling wires. Hello, Debbie. What in the world would attack a rhino? What in the world indeed? An adult rhino would ask the same question. What in the world would possibly want to attack me? So an adult rhino, I think, is pretty... I mean, other than us humans, that has got to be the most ironic of all things. Here is this formidable animal that has evolved. It has almost stayed unchanged for millions of years. It is this magnificent piece of genetic engineering that nature is very proud of. And along comes these hairless beings that have neither a sting, they don't have a bite, they don't have teeth, they don't have strength, all they have is this brain. A brain that teaches them how to make things and attain a brain that creates something called money, and suddenly rhino equals money. And the only thing that the human wants from the rhino is the non-living part of the rhino, yet they killed for it. It just, it just doesn't make sense. So the biggest threat and the main reason why rhino are where they are today is because of us hominids, us alien beings that somehow found a place on this planet that is so removed from nature, yet never mind, I won't go there. But yes, we are somewhat removed from the natural order of things to the point where we have to kill a giant animal that doesn't have a predator just for a piece of it that isn't even a living tissue. So, young rhino, on the other hand, are vulnerable. Babies, very small baby rhino. You think a baby rhino, when it is born, isn't very much bigger than a big warthog. So, lion could possibly, but hyena most definitely. I've seen horrific film. I've never seen it myself, but I have seen film of hyena that followed. It was a documentary once, quite a while ago. They followed this rhino cow and her calf for days, and eventually wore this calf down, and eventually they took this calf. It's sad how determined they were to get this calf. Hello Deb in Connecticut, and welcome Deb. This is a new one. Well, sorry, I didn't mean to objectify, but a new person sending an email for the first time. Hello Deb in Connecticut. CT. So just looking in the hole in a tree. There's nothing there. Deb wants to know what did Deb want to know? But I'm impossible tonight. The mongoose, my word, are they part of the weasel family? Gosh, you know, I'm impossible sometimes. Deb, no, mongoose are not part of the weasel family. Mongoose are from a family known as the Bavarids. The weasel is part of the mustelids, I think. What you doing, Mr. Johnson?
I lost so much. BT came back. Last I saw them on the front was going back in a south direction.
Later. Doris in Maryland. The name of the plant, these thorns. This is one of the acacia species, and this I think could be the nilotica. These thorns. No, I don't know. It was a piece of dead acacia, so I can't really. I'm trying to think. They've got a slight curve to them. They're very long thorns. One of the acacia species. Have to look at the leaves. Many of the acacias have these white thorns, and Doris, you're right. They do. They make incredible additions to art pieces. They are very artistic. They're especially when you find. See if I can find it. Maybe a bare tree for you. It's just got the white thorns on it. And in fact, in East Africa, they're impressive. Acres and acres of some of the certain species, like the Acacia drepanulobum, the whistling thorn, and they have these huge bulbous growths on the base of the thorns that are caused by the larva of a moth, and then the moth eventually emerges and the gall is taken over by cocktail ants who then protect the tree, and it's the holes in those big galls that actually whistle in strong winds. I've heard it, it's true. That's why it's called a whistling thorn. And it's incredible when the dry season, when you look through this forest of just these white thorns, And then you get the bagworms that come and cut them all the same length, about 3 inches long, and sew them into a bag that they live in. And then you get certain times of the year where you get one acacia that's just draped in bagworms, and it looks like a Christmas tree decorated with thingies hanging. They are African Christmas trees, by the way. We're always in lodges and things come Christmas time, because we don't have pine trees and we can't cut down a whole big tree. We find an old dead acacia with the white thorns, nicely shaped acacia with all those lovely white thorns. They make lovely Christmas trees, African Christmas trees. But all of the acacias in Africa have got thorns. Not all of them, though, are straight, long, white thorns. Some of them are very small, curved hook thorns that you actually don't see very well. Things like the knob thorn, the monkey thorn, the black monkey thorn, the hook thorn, the 3-hook thorn, and then you get the one acacia that is decided, well, hook thorns are a pretty good defense, but straight thorns are also a good defense, so I think I'll just grow hook thorns and straight thorns, and that is the umbrella thorn. It's a very characteristic umbrella shaped tree that a lot of people associate with a sort of savanna kind of a scene, with this wide open grassland and just one tree on the horizon with a very typical umbrella shape, and that's invariably an acacia tortilis, which is the umbrella thorn. It has a hook thorn and a straight thorn, and all the thorns on all of the acacias are modified leaves as opposed to spines. There's some trees that have spines, those are modified branches. But the thorns in the acacia are actually what give it its name, because acacia comes from the Greek word akos, which means thorn or needle, which confuses me because there are a lot of acacias in Australia and none of them have got thorns. That's not really where the confusing part comes in, apart from the fact that there's an acacia that doesn't have thorns, like the wattles. Some of the wattles, they're acacias, the families thereof. And I think what confuses me is that there was this talk about the acacias in Africa having their names changed from acacia to something else, and that only the Australian acacias will be called acacias. Well, confused. That's where the confusion comes in. It's because none of them have got thorns. So why call a tree acacia if it does? Anyways, that all came from just Doris asking about the thorn. Mind works in mysterious ways. In fact, look, I was talking so much I didn't even put my lights on. Pardon? What? What? Miss Chris. Oh, sorry, I'm seeing what looks like. Would Karula's, the cub's father, would they be a danger to the cubs? Should he come across them? No, I think he's already been with them, or close to them. And no, I don't think so. I mean, he's been seen with his other cubs and they've gotten on well. We even saw him and Induna one day together and they were doing fine. If I didn't know any better, I'd say that this Tambuti is starting to get flower heads on the top there. But could be, I guess. We'll be seeing them in daylight soon. From the red leaves, they start getting this pinkish tinge as the flower spikes start coming out, before the flower spikes open up into flowers. I don't think Yambila Yordan would be a danger to them. In fact, the other day, their grandfather was in the same place as them. And yes, the fact, well, it was interesting because although the little girl ran off to the other side of the dam, and the little boy they were around the dam with Mafufunyan, their grandfather, Karula's father, with him the whole day, and he was evidently sniffing around after them at some point. But I thought that there was a possibility he would pose a danger. And then Karula came back for the cubs, and the young male cub joined up with her. And then she started approaching Mafufunyan, got to sort of within about 10-15 feet from him, and sat and snarled and hissed at him, while her cub was playing not far from her, almost oblivious to the presence of the old man. And the old man was actually behaving somewhat submissively. Granted, he was injured. I don't think that would have made much difference. He had a sore arm, big deal. For a big male leopard like that, it's half of the course. It wouldn't be the first time. Hello, Jenny. But you didn't tell me where you're from, Jenny. I need to know about the long-tailed bird we had earlier. That was it used to be known as the long-tailed shrike. Now known as the magpie shrike. But I think that's a very confusing name because we don't get magpies. It's got nothing to do with a magpie, as far as I know. I don't know what a magpie. I've never seen a magpie. Magpies are not African. But it's known as a magpie shrike. Are they shrikes though? Okay. Tara knows magpies, probably from the UK, just longer tails. But these have got well, anyways, they're shrikes, magpie shrikes. And Jenny was saying they look like the scissor-tailed flycatcher that she has as a state bird, and she has bagworms in her garden. Maybe that's Florida, Texas, one of the southern states where it's warm, maybe even Carolinas. Magpies are part of the crow family. Thanks. There's a nightjar in the road up there. We're taking Yala Road south because we're still looking for their father. Yoo-hoo, Yambilu, Yodan. Shrikes and flycatchers are kind of sort of related. Flycatchers are just smaller, lighter, less aggressive versions. Still quite voracious when it comes to their insect catching activities. Oklahoma. I knew it was down there somewhere. Hello, Jenny. Thanks for that. Okay. Well, I'm not allowed to say that. I don't know if that's derogatory. And I didn't say it with the accent. Apologies if it is. Thank you, Stacy. Who on earth are all of you? Maybe they're Impala. I think it's Impala. Kathy just wanting to know if Tara uses the same vehicle. Ah, it's Impala. Sorry, Impala. You pretended to be a leopard, one of you. Yes, Kathy, Tara uses this vehicle. We do have two vehicles. We have the old one we call the Jigger. This one is called the Gunda. Of course, the cars have to have names, you know. But yes. Oh, there was an elephant here. But this is the only one we're using for drives at the moment, with the HD camera on the back. And the equipment that we have on the vehicle to broadcast to you. Hello, Impala. I'm going to just come around here and see them. Not going to shine on them, I'm afraid. We'll see them in the daytime. But the broadcast equipment, although we have broadcast equipment on the Jigger, it's not as at the moment it's not as powerful as this. So we wouldn't get as far with the Jigger as we do with the Gunda. So we don't use the Jigger at the moment. Well, we do for just as a run around. Mustn't do that. Why are you asking? But yes, you'll see the same things in the front here when Tara's driving. Wonder why you ask, he says again. Oh, that's something with big eyes like a buffalo. Roadblock ahead. We're going to be asked for passports. Everybody keep quiet, don't say a word. Just pretend you've got your passports. They don't sometimes want you to show them. Just if you say yes, then they're satisfied. They're incapable of just... Never mind, I'm getting silly. Another buffalo to the left. Good evening, Squire. Yes, we've got passports. Can we pass? Thank you. Old man. Oh, that's that old guy with a bit of a owie. I thought was on his leg. It's not, it's on his scrotum. I want to stop. He's gone down into the drainage line. There's a rhino around here. And I want to show you something that I've been meaning to show you for a while. Well, a bat just flew past. Should be able to see a couple of these social spiders that we don't get to see during the day. They're very small. That's the big community web spider web. But close to the top of the web, there's a few there. You can see them at the top, up a bit more. There's one coming down on the left. There's a couple up there, crawling around. See that? They have multiple entrances. It's like almost like a big apartment block. They're nocturnal spiders, these. Even as chilly as it gets, they still get quite busy. A very good chance of them catching something small. And they have triangular catch nets radiating from that big ball, that big nest. And as the seasons change and turn, leaves get caught in the web, which they then drag to the center, and that becomes, well, almost like a new apartment as they sew it into the whole bulk, and that's how it gets bigger. And males are moved out. The young females will stay behind. Each spider is only a few millimeters. They're very small, harmless, but just incredible in that they live in a community and that they work together as a unit, like termites or ants, and some types of wasps. Okay. You can smell this buffalo. I can't hear him anymore. I thought maybe we'd sit quietly for a few minutes and hear a leopard calling. Well, I know that Yambilu Yodan is possibly around here somewhere. Or he was this morning. I'm sure it was him. The tracks I saw, and then Franklin shouting when we were with the rhino. There's a light jar. Bye-bye, nightjar. For those of you in North America, that is family of the whippoorwill. That is our African whippoorwill. Makes a similar sound too. Bird with an extra large gape and whiskers. And they hunt on the wing. They hunt insects flying above them. That's why they sit on the ground, because when you're on the open ground, you get more sky to act as a background, so you have a greater chance of finding something to eat, as opposed to sitting in a tree where everything below you will be obscure, well, being visible because of the dark background. The idea is to have the light background of the sky, the night sky, especially for something that has very good night vision. See even better than we can. Just going to have a look on Central Road a little bit. Here at the water. That's for the same reason that cats get very low to the ground when they're stalking. Lowers the horizon, makes everything stand out against the horizon, and for the animals that they may be stalking, they won't be seen against the dark background. Well, not that easily at any rate. Binky, hello Binky. That is known as a social spider or a community web spider. One of the few spiders that are active at this time of year, but active only on their web. You've got to remember that a spider like that is almost their entire universe. That web that they live on, they don't ever leave it. They don't pose a threat to anyone being on it, in it. I have a couple outside my door at home, a couple of quite big nests, and that gives me the opportunity to observe them quite a lot. They've been there for a couple of years now. Got some wonderful photos last time I was at home of them. I just walked out of my house with the camera, and a jewel beetle, a metallic black jewel beetle, had flown into the web, and they were mobbing it. And it's very unusual for them to do that during the day. They will, if something lands in the web during the day, they will swarm it and they will subdue it. They do have venom, obviously, because they have to subdue their prey. It's very slow acting, even on small things like little jewel beetles, but it does eventually take its hold. And then they'll drag large items to the center of the web where they'll feed on it communally. Sometimes there'll be something small that might land in the web, and then one spider will get it. But when it's something large like a katydid or a dragonfly or something large, you'll find that almost the entire community will swarm that insect, and they'll all get to feed on it. Hello, Alan. Alan. Nice to hear from you. Haven't heard from you for a while, Alan the camel, Alan. If you could take 100 square meters I know exactly what you're saying because I've thought of this often. If you could take 100 square meters, theoretically, sort of tip the contents out and see what is there, what would it be? Well, I think, Alan, you would find that possibly the spiders outweigh, and because there's another thing, is that the weight, the combined weight of the arthropods, in other words, the insects and spiders, the combined weight of all insects and spiders would outweigh all the vertebrate animals. Unless, of course, you just happen to choose a particular piece of square 100 meters that had a herd of elephant on it. But you might find only a few mammals, large mammals. You'd maybe find 1 or 2, maybe 5 or 6. You'd find a few large mammals, and as you go down the scale in size, suddenly you start getting more and more, and of course greater variety as you go down the scale. So when it comes to things like some of the insects, you suddenly get maybe multiple species. Like spiders, you will probably might get 20 or 30 different species of spiders out of that, but you will get millions of different types of bacteria and fungi. It would be an incredible study to be able to take every living thing in a square 100 meters, no matter where it is, and be able to quantify or do that, list the contents. I have no doubt there would be something there that has never been seen before, or is very rarely even acknowledged. Excuse me. Actually not that chilly tonight, it's quite pleasant. Might have something to do with the cloud. The cloud might have something to do with higher pressure, a high pressure system coming in that has created slightly warmer temperatures, which is normally followed by a cold front. Roma, do leopards go through their cycle but choose not to mate? I don't know, Roma. It's a new one on me. I couldn't imagine why. Well, come to think of it, I could. Insecurity, same as lionesses might, because they don't have a male that is proven to them that he can hold the territory and ensure the survival of their young. Or they might mate but not conceive. I suppose it sounded a bit strange to me at first, but the more I think about it, the more it is likely, or it is possible, I guess. But something I'd have to look into, Roma. Whether they come into their estrus cycle yet. See, they might mate, but then maybe they might not produce cubs. But I couldn't imagine why. Leopard would. Why it would occur for leopard. I mean, when I think about why it happens with lion, you see, lion, something's been here because there's water splashed pretty high up, unless the hippos have been at it again. Herons there. Water splashed quite high up from the water line. So something's been splashing around at the dam. Any of the zoomies, can you enlighten me, please? There is quite a lot of ripple activity. Yes, there's a grey heron that's just actually, sorry, I frightened it away, it just flew. But grey heron can hardly cause this kind of disturbance in the water. don't know if the hippo have been at it again. There are ripples. Something's moving in the water somewhere. Because there isn't a breath of wind. Should be like a mirror. Ah, there, the heron's in front of the camera now. Or maybe that was the heron that was on the camera. And the heron that I frightened on the other side of the dam was a different one. You see, lion, by their very nature, being as aggressive as they are, being their own worst enemies, as we were talking about earlier, when a lion takes over a territory, if there's even a hint of his I'm trying to articulate this. If there's a likelihood that he's already a little bit too old, or maybe even too young, that he's not going to be able to hold that territory for at least 3 years, 2 to 3 years, then it's possible that the females won't produce cubs until such time as these lions can prove that they can hold off others and maintain that territory, and that they're virile and strong enough. Because it's no good for a lioness to have cubs just because she's in estrus with a male that's just come in and he's either too young or too old, and 6 months down the line, when her youngsters are only 3 months old, a new lion comes in and kills them and then wants to mate with her, and then she produces more cubs, and that could just have this endless cycle of her producing cubs, males coming in, taking over and killing her cubs. She wants to make sure that the male that's coming in is going to be taking hold of that territory, and he's going to be able to keep that territory and keep others at bay to protect his own offspring, because he is driven to some degree by that need, not only to protect his territory and his females, but the consequence of that is that he's invariably protecting the lives of his own offspring, his gene, his progeny, which would be a couple of years, because if a new male comes in, even cubs 1 year old can be killed. I mean, we've seen with the mapokos that even adult females can be killed. Of course, that's an anomaly. However, as far as leopards are concerned, well, maybe a leopard could live in an area where male tenureship is not very strong, where that there is an upheaval with males and she doesn't want to produce cubs, that maybe she'll come into estrus. You see, my first reaction was, animals can't resist the natural progression of pheromones and estrogen and testosterone and all these hormonal changes that go through their bodies. But yeah, I suppose maybe there is some way that they can resist, because the conditions are not optimal. That is a survival strategy of many things. They won't produce offspring until conditions are right. So, interesting concept, Roma. Something to look into. Brenda in Georgia. Now see, now I've got Georgia on my mind. That's nice. I'll have to go and listen to that when I get home. Hello, Brenda. Thank you for your question. Do domestic animals ever wander onto the preserve? The reserve. There's no P in reserve. Oh, there's lots of animal P. But just I'm a little, sometimes a stickler for correctness, for want of a better word. But we couldn't really refer to it as a preserve. That's kind of something you put in a jar. But the game reserve does have occasionally domestic dogs or even feral dogs. The thing is that they're semi-feral. They're domestic dogs from the villages that the villagers send into the reserve to chase animals out, hunting for the pot, poaching, sort of a very mild form of poaching. It's not a commercial form of poaching, it's a sustenance form of poaching. It is, and it's just as illegal, but it's just not as destructive. Cats, well, hopefully not. You see, unfortunately, there should be rules that prevent domestic animals from coming into natural areas for many reasons, particularly for the sake of the domestic animals, because they just simply can't deal with the wild animals that live here that just want to eat them or compete with them. And that's where it becomes a little bit of a cruel issue, that you end up having to, as beautiful as the place might be, you end up having to confine your domestic animals, and they end up having to be kept indoors or within fenced enclosures, or so suddenly your domestic animals become the ones in cages. I'm sorry, it's just really, it's not fair to them. Plus all the dangers of ticks and snakes, and when your animal, when your dog gets attacked by baboons or bitten by a snake, it's a long way to take it to a vet. I just know so many people that are heartbroken because they insist on having puppies, they insist on having dogs in the bush, and dogs will try and play with a puff adder or get aggressive with a spitting cobra, or you just can't do that to domestic animals. But the other thing, of course, is that they're domestic born diseases that could be fatal to a number of animals in the bush. In fact, wild dogs in some parts of Kenya and northern Tanzania, wild dogs were being wiped out by things like parvovirus and canine distemper because of the coming into contact with feral or domestic dogs. So it's not good having domestic or feral. Feral meaning domestic once upon a time that then went wild. That's what feral means. You don't get feral wild animals, you only get feral domestic animals. Or you could even refer to the plant species as being feral. For instance, the red star zinnia that we have here has become feral. It came in as a domestic plant for gardens because it was pretty, and yes, where it gets a lot of moisture and food, plant food and stuff, they are pretty flowers, but here they just make a mess. They can be pretty. There are times when that splash of red in the green can look quite pretty, but they don't belong. Unfortunately for dogs though, it's kind of a shoot to kill policy here in the reserve, because they are invariably linked to poachers, that they are pretty much shot on sight because of the danger that they pose to the wildlife. Domestic cats pose a threat to the genetic integrity of things like the African wild cat, which is an indigenous cat that looks exactly like the domestic, like a tabby in a way. I'm hoping we're going to find, this is what we're doing now, is I'm looking for eyes, hoping that I can find you something like an African wild cat. But then you get somebody who wants to come in and they want to bring their kitty cat, and I've had it. I lived in a lodge, in a neighboring lodge here in the Sabi Sand. She insisted on bringing her cat, and they were Persians, and she had to cage in a section of her garden with chicken wire so that nothing could get to the cats. Hello, bunny rabbit. Except it's not a rabbit, it's a hare, and I've lost my clutch. Uh-oh. No, I'm not going anywhere until I feed my clutch reservoir. It's a very thirsty reservoir. Please excuse me a moment. Take 2 seconds. I was hoping it would just make it to the end, but it didn't. Unbelievable how I can get tied up like that. Eyes. We just come past Chillapan, by the way, and we're at the junction with Weaver's Nest. We're going to go past Philemon's Dip. He's been ambling along nicely. Clouds getting thicker. Sometimes you get the cloud burning away by sunset. Right. Meanwhile, scrub hair has disappeared. And that reminds me that I was saying I'm hoping that we can find the likes of an African wildcat. And people who would bring in would want to bring in a domestic cat. Domestic cats can breed with African wildcats and produce a hybrid that is fertile. And that can interfere with the gene pool of the African wildcat. There was a photograph posted for identification from Nkoro Cam last night. It was very clearly a civet, what's known as a civet cat, but it's not really a cat. Any of you managed to catch that? There was a civet in Nkoro camera. It looked quite strange because it looked like it was in snow, but that's just because the infrared just made it look so white. And that's another thing that we're hoping to find with our evening travels. Hour at night that we drive around after sunset. Sometimes we're lucky, sometimes we see spiders. Philemon's Cut Line's a nice open road. Let's see if we can find anything going up Philemon's Cut Line. In Vancouver wants to know where the rhino's nose is located. On the end of his face. We were close up on the rhino's nose this morning and could have counted nose hairs. So if there's a picture somewhere perhaps of the rhino from this morning, right above the bottom, the upper lip, at the bottom of the snout, just above, see the two big nostrils on the side of that very square mouth, just above the upper lip, inch or two. That's the nose, the nostrils rather. It has quite a long nose, which is part of the face. So when you see the skeleton and you get to see it, a very long nose. But it's not an external nose. I mean, I'm talking about the actual cartilage and stuff inside, and the nasal passage is very long. Hello, Dawn. Excuse me. Dawn wants to know where the map is. I'm sure a few others too. Well, Dawn, you need to go to a website that's wildearth.ning, N-I-N-G, November, India, November, Golf, N-I-N-G. So it's wildearth.ning.com. And that is the sort of social website page of Wild Earth. And you can register or sign up. And there are a bunch of different tabs. And under the resources tab, I think it's under the resource tab, there's the Juba map. I'm not sure if you get a Juma map if you go onto the Juma website. I'm not sure if there's one there. Oh, so much for nice open ground here on Philemon's cut line. I thought we might see something. Especially since it's fairly warm this evening. Normally it would have several more layers on, including gloves, which I think the baboons are wearing, because I can't find them. Four and a half. Bats are enjoying the warm air. There have been a few bats swooping down into the beam of the light. Fairly fresh rhino dung in this midden. Fairly fresh rhino tracks by the looks of it. There are cars that have been on top of it. He might be at Twindale. Okay. Well, sadly, everyone, it's been a lovely afternoon. You've got me talking today. I don't know, I got quite talkative. Yes. Something started there. This has been our PM safari at Juma Game Reserve, and I'm standing on twigs. Sorry. Well, PM Safari here at Wild Earth Safari. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Mark, and Becky has been on camera. Tara has been providing me with all your questions, and I want to thank you all for your participation and for being with us. And from all of us here at Wild Earth Safari, good night. Enjoy your day. Have a wonderful weekend.
Hi everybody, this is time for